If you look around your local Walmart or Target, you'll notice that most first-party Nintendo controllers and PowerA controllers go for the typical $60 when they're wireless, and then usually the wired options are anywhere from $20 to $30. So in today's video, we're going to take a look at the YS06, a $30 wireless third-party Nintendo Switch Pro controller, and determine whether or not that controller can stack up to a first-party wireless controller or a PowerA controller. Let's take a look. Welcome to Top Spec, your one-stop shop for tech content. And if you're new around here, we upload tech videos every single week relating to gaming, film, and much more. So if any of that sounds like your thing, feel free to join us by clicking that red subscribe button down below. So before this review begins, I do feel that it's probably necessary that I address that we were sent this controller for free from EasySMX, but we were not paid by them to speak highly of the product or sway our review one way or another, and every single opinion expressed in this video will be my own. Also throughout this video, I will be comparing the YS06 to both the official first-party Switch Pro controller as well as the $50 Switch Pro controller from PowerA, which is still a officially licensed Nintendo product. So since this controller costs right around half the price of the first-party Switch Pro controller, there are plenty of inferior aspects to this controller's build quality. To begin, the controller weighs 6.9 ounces, nice, or roughly 196 grams, while the first-party controller weighs 14.1 ounces or roughly 400 grams. So there's definitely a major difference between the two controllers' weight. The Nintendo controller feels significantly more premium to the EasySMX controller. As for the material, the first-party controller features two different textures, a simple hard plastic around the main body of the controller and a more grippy feeling plastic around the handles, while the YS06 is all entirely one material with a more matte finish on the underside of the controller and a glossy finish on top of the design. On the topic of design, this controller does actually come in 7 different design options at the time of recording this video, and the one that we were sent by EasySMX happens to be the one design that comes with a glossy finish. So that's definitely something to keep in mind when you're looking through the designs. There are some designs that are a little bit over the top in my opinion, but design is a very subjective thing, so I'm just happy to see that EasySMX are providing many different options for the design of the controller. So at this point in the video, you might be thinking that I'm giving this controller's build quality a lot of criticism, but that's mainly just because I'm comparing it to the first-party Pro controller. And the fact that I'm even able to compare those two is a great sign for this controller. It's definitely not as good as the first-party Switch Pro controller, but it's definitely better than the EasySMX 4108 that we reviewed last year, and does a great job standing up for itself at the $35 price tag. Moving on to the buttons featured in this controller, it definitely puts up a fair fight when comparing it to the more expensive controllers. Although it does fall flat in some areas, most of the buttons are pretty much on par with the first-party controllers. To begin, the ABXY buttons feel just about the same as the real deal, with just a little more travel distance when pressed. And the D-pad is pretty much the exact same situation. The buttons feature about the same mix of clicky and mushy featured on the official controller, with just a little bit more travel distance. The only major differences that I would point out are that of the triggers and the analog sticks. The triggers or ZLZR buttons on the YS06 are significantly larger than the Nintendo controllers and almost have a sharp edge at the end, which sticks off the bottom of the controller. Now this isn't a huge deal to me, but it does seem a little bit out of place when the rest of the controller feels very much well thought out and well designed. The triggers on the bottom just feel kind of plasticky and sharp, and like they kind of were like almost like an afterthought, I feel like. As for the joysticks, both the YS06 and the first-party Pro controller feature pretty much the same exact travel distance when moving the joysticks left or right and up and down, and they're even the exact same height off of the base of the controller. The only difference I'd point out on the YS06 is its concave design on the tip of the analog sticks compared to the official controller's convex design, and the significantly louder sound when pressing down on these sticks. Aside from that, the YS06 can actually be powered on by pressing the home button, which may seem like a downgrade to the first-party Pro controllers, but I would say this is pretty much an upgrade, just because if you put those controllers in a bag and the buttons get pressed by other things in your bag, the controller will be turning itself on rapidly, like on and off, and the battery life can drain pretty quickly by just having it in your bag. Now, when the YS06 turns on with just the home button, that's a little bit of a different story, because that home button is small and it's more difficult to press by just like something brushing up against it, and your battery life will last a little bit longer if you carry it around loose in a bag. This controller also features this T or turbo button just to the left of the right joystick, and this button pretty much allows any button on your controller to be used as a spam button when pressed and held, essentially allowing you to spam some moves in fighting games like Smash or Mortal Kombat. I likely won't really personally end up using this feature too much just because I mainly play Mario Kart and Animal Crossing on my Switch, but I'm sure this button could create some pretty dumb and hilarious situations in a game like Smash or Mortal Kombat. So if you ever felt that you wanted a controller that needed a button like that, this controller has it. On EasySMX's website, they say that this controller has a built-in 600 milliamp hour battery, which should only take 2 to 3 hours to fully charge and lasts up to 8 to 10 hours of continuous gaming, which is pretty solid for a third-party controller. However, this really isn't too much compared to that of the first-party controller, which gets you around 40 hours of continuous gaming. But in my opinion, how much of a difference does it really make simply plugging in your controller every night when you put your Switch away for the day? Obviously, this would be a different situation if we were talking about a phone. 2 to 3 hours compared to 40 hours is a huge difference. But if you are spending time on your Switch every single day, it would only take a little bit more just simply plugging in your controller every night versus charging it every 3 or 4 nights. This controller also comes with a USB Type-C charging cable, which is really nice to see, especially on a controller of this price point. And you also will be able to charge both the first-party controller and this controller with the same cable if you own the first-party controller. And it's just great to see more products with USB-C, even though this technology has been out for several years now. This controller also features rumble, and it is adjustable, so you can change how soft or aggressive you want the rumble to be when you are playing games. And if you don't like rumble at all, you can simply turn it off as well. I'd like to point out that the PowerA controller that I purchased for $50 does not feature rumble, and also it doesn't have a charger. You have to replace the batteries in it. So the fact that this $35 controller is outperforming the $50 PowerA controllers in some ways is a great sign, because the YS06 has rumble and a rechargeable battery, while the PowerA controller does not have rumble and requires you to replace AA batteries. So should you consider the EasySMX YS06 controller when looking for a third-party Nintendo Switch Pro controller alternative? I would 100% tell you yes. This controller does pretty much everything extremely well for the price. Aside from some cut corners on the build quality and a less than stellar battery life, this controller really holds its weight compared to the PowerA controller that I own and the first-party Nintendo Switch Pro controller made by Nintendo. Plus, you get that fun little turbo button with this controller, which even the first-party controllers don't have. So even when the controller is about half the price, you still get an additional feature, which is really cool. We'll leave a link in the description below to EasySMX's website, as well as the specific page for this controller. I seriously have no major complaints for this controller, and I've been using it for around a month now. So if you're on the fence, I highly recommend this controller. Like I said before, here at Top Spec, we upload videos every single week, so if that sounds like your thing and you enjoyed this video, feel free to give it a like and maybe press that red subscribe button down below. Anyways, that's about it. I'm Connor, and this is Top Spec. We'll see you next week.